Hello and welcome to another edition of the Canadian Premier League Newsroom podcast. I'm Kristian Jack. On this week's show, we will look back at the 4 games this past weekend, and we had some great matches and get you set for a busy week ahead in the Canadian Premier League. Canada also 1 week away, and we'll start ramping up pretty much all our content around that in a week's time. As usual, delighted to be joined by Marty Thompson and Charlie O'Connor Clarke. Benedict is in some, economics class or something now. So we brought the weatherman himself, Adam Jenkins, into our show. Adam, good morning. How are you, mate?
I've said this time and time again, I didn't think the amount of ground school work that I do as I'm working for my pilot's license would come in handy, but apparently I need to be able to read radars and predict the weather. So yeah, I just want to express my condolences. I'm really disappointed to hear that we had to sack Benedict after he showed up to last week's podcast with what I assume was a trumpet with a couple of jammed in the bell. So look, it was a change that needed to be made. I'm hoping to channel my inner Benedict and do a great job. But look, this is the epitome of long-time listener, first-time caller. You guys know I'm a fan of you and a fan of the podcast, so I'm looking forward to this.
No, Adam, we went over there yesterday, and he had like, the old movies would have like the tin can with a string on another tin can that you tried in real life and it never worked. He had that. So
that checks out, Marty. That checks out.
Marty went back, literally our own Marty went back to the Future to Benedict's house and figured out that he was broadcasting from 1985. So we're hopeful that 2021 will join us next week when he rejoins us as well. But Adam, always a pleasure to have you on. We're massive fans of you as well. So thanks for joining us. Schedule quirks saw 4 teams in the West side this week play 4 teams in the East. They went head to head, and you may have thought heading into the weekend that the West was the best. But after all the 4 teams combined to beat them, boy, oh boy, the beasts in the East came out on this weekend. We're going to get into this. The scorelines were Halifax Wanderers 1, FC Edmonton 0, Atlético Ottawa 3, Cavalry 1, Forge beat Pacific 2-1 in the heavyweight clash at the nightcap. And on Sunday, York United came from behind to beat Valour and Phillip Dos Santos by 2-1. We'll hit all the storylines, but we start at the Wanderers grounds on Saturday at the come-on match of the week. I was in studio. Adam was commentating, and you boys were covering it. In the end, Charlie, I'll go to you first for this. You were covering it for us. Not a classic by any means, but just a game that Stephen Hart's team just simply had to win. 8 games unbeaten now, but only 3 wins during that point. An enormous 3 points for them.
Yeah, I think really when I look at it now, I think this basically went almost exactly to plan for Halifax, because they knew that they played that really big emotional game midweek in the Canadian Championship against Montreal. That was 90 plus minutes of very intense football and, a lot of emotions coming out of that. And they knew that this was going to be a tough ask. Even at home, they didn't travel, but just to play these 90 minutes in a game where they, again, really needed the result for the playoff race. They knew they were going to tire in the second half, and they absolutely did. But I think when they went into this game, all they would have said would be, all right, let's try and score a goal fairly early. Let's get on the board and then just do what we can to try and hold on to that lead. And that's exactly what happened. Joao Morelli scores the goal, as he always seems to at the moment. They had a few more chances. Maybe they would have liked to finish those. But yeah, the second half, Halifax clearly completely gassed. A lot of players that have played 90 minutes, maybe every 3 days for the last couple of weeks, still on the pitch for this one. And I mean, you can say a lot of good things about Edmonton in the way that they tried to press Halifax and, put them under pressure. But at the end of the day, Halifax didn't break. And that's probably as much as they could have asked for.
Yeah, no Dona, no Ruby, no Jaffrad, amongst others, went to a back 4 really by necessity because they couldn't really play any of the defenders on the pitch. Santos was very good as well. Adam, Morelli scored again. It wasn't a classic performance from him, but you've covered him a lot this year. You've commentated a lot on his goals. There's that spot in English where we call it that term Johnny on the spot. This is Joao on the spot, just finds a way to score goals. And again, just a simple place to put it in. Bad goal for Edmonton at that time to give up the way they did it. But again, Morelli just keeps carrying this team offensively on his back, Adam.
Yeah, I think Hume without knowing saved me because I had Joao Owow on deck for a good goal, and then he just jumped in with his analysis right away, so we didn't get to hear that one.
But we do here. You saved the best for here.
That's true. I always come with presents, KJ. I never come to a party empty-handed. But you're right. He just continues to do what he shouldn't need to do, and it's almost like a lot of the gaffers have like their go-to lines or themes you expect to hear from them. And at this point with Hardy, it's just, yeah, he's scoring and it's great, but can someone else, for the love of God, please just score a goal too?
Yeah.
Because that's what they're missing right now. And it's good until it stops working. And if Morelli just gets shut down, if they put 3 men on him, for example, in a playoff game and no one else can step up, then they're in trouble. But I don't think you can say enough about the player. Obviously, I think we're starting to unfortunately realize that Akeem Garcia may be more like what we're seeing right now than what we saw from him in 2020. But Alex Marshall had another great game. He's, I think, the player on that team that goes with the least amount of praise when he deserves it. He's just so creative. And there's a lot of tools there. There's a lot of things that are right for them. And as you mentioned, KJ, the squad rotation, and Charlie, you alluded to it too, but out of necessity, they had to change things around. And I don't think they looked that far from the team that they want to be. So look, they're going to be in this hunt. It's going to be tough. Obviously, the results yesterday didn't make the race as fun for us as we would have hoped for, with Valour dropping the full 3, which we'll get to. But look, there's a lot of things to like right now about Halifax, and 1-0 win on a game on short rest after an emotional come down. I don't think there's too many complaints there.
Yeah, we'll get to Edmonton in a second, Marty, but Halifax still got 5 home games. And I think when they play at home, things are very different. I mean, I know they haven't won all 5, but, they've been very good at home. They've scored a lot of goals at home. And they'll be confident if they can somehow get more goal scorers, which is what Adam alluded to, that they can get over the line here and really bring York down and get away from that 4th spot. But it does appear that is, an atmosphere, and Alan Koch talked about it afterwards, that unlike many others, that you're always going to know you're in a battle. And as I said on the broadcast, an atmosphere that fans know when the team needs to help carry them over the line, which they did in that second half as everyone took that big collective breath of fresh air at the end because we were all gassed. Yeah,
well, I'm glad you touched on the home field advantage, because I think that really is Halifax's secret weapon coming into the last bit of games, because, with Joao Morelli, if he's the only guy who can score goals for Halifax, then I really am not sure if they're going to be able to better York over the rest of the season. So the home field advantage will be important. Players do like going out there to play, but again, for Edmonton, that's a big travel day. That's a big commitment, even on that rest that they had. I know we're going to talk about them in a bit, but yeah, that's got to be Halifax's secret weapon. That's really what they've got to try to utilize going forward.
Halifax, 25 points from 19 games played, 6 wins, 7 draws, 6 losses, just 21 goals in those 19 games. And as I said earlier, an 8-game unbeaten run for them. You mentioned it, Charlie, quote, "In the first half, I thought we were well under control. I didn't really get troubled much," said Stephen Hart after the game. "In the second half, I thought we started to move the ball too slow and in the wrong areas of the pitch. And they started to get into the game with a number of corners, but we defended well." The game basically turned to a second ball game where they became more direct, and they're good at that because they're big and strong. When that happens, they started to get more corners again, but they held firm, did the Halifax Wanderers. You mentioned it. Marshall did really well, almost in our team of the week. Didn't quite get there. Kurjanovic did. I thought he was excellent as well. Shout out to Rampersad, I thought was tremendous in back-to-back games, by the way. He was very good against Montreal in midweek as well. One of the Eddies, what was Alan Koch's theme after the game, Charlie, as you were talking to him? Just the first game in 11, second game in 17 days. So he was able to play the majority of his best players. But as he called it, a real suicide stretch coming up, 8 games in 26 days to follow that. And they don't really have that squad either. So this is going to be a big test for them. And it felt like a game where anybody who thought they probably had chances going into the playoffs, you're probably looking at their playoff chances being extremely thin now.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to assess it. Edmonton's a team that has struggled for depth this year, I think, at a lot of times. And even when they do have a lot of rest, and they did have a fairly robust bench in this game, which, was maybe a bit of a nice change. But yeah, they can't be too down on themselves. They've played some pretty good football recently. And I think that's maybe not something that we've talked about as much as we should have, but they have put some very good teams under a lot of pressure. In this game, again, we talk about Halifax being in control in the first half and slipping a bit in the second. That's not entirely Halifax's, doing, because Edmonton made some changes at halftime. Easton Ongaro came out of the game for Gino Asua, which is a very, very odd change to see them make at halftime. But then Alan Koch did explain it at the end of the game. It was completely tactical. There's nothing wrong with Ongaro. He just wanted to move to, I think it was more of a 4-4-2 that they came out with Azriel Gonzalez kind of moving a little bit further up the pitch, and alongside Tobias Reshevsky, and it seemed to work a lot better for them. I think Stephen Hart himself said that they got a lot more direct, and that's a very hard thing to play against when your entire team is completely out of gas. And I think it maybe was a little bit unfortunate for the Eddies not to actually find one of those goals. They had 11 shots in that second half, right? I think 18 on the whole day. And maybe we want to say that some of those shots weren't necessarily very high danger. And that's probably also a credit to Halifax's center backs, maybe keeping them a little bit to the perimeter of the box, keeping them from distance. But yeah, the Eddies had a lot of possession, a lot of good movements with the ball, just getting it forward as quickly as possible. And I think that's maybe the biggest positive that they're going to come away with this.
Last one on this game to you, Adam. We'll get to Marty in a second with the big clash in the nation's capital that he covered. But the Ongaro story was an interesting one. We were there at OneSoccer when it's happening. When something like that happens instantly as broadcasters, we need to know why. Yep. So we already contacted the Red Hat. We're trying to get our reporter on the scene to find out what's going on. Is he injured? Has he got any ice on his leg? We got that one ISO shot when you and Humi came back on. And like Ongaro was like, I don't know whether it'd been an argument or whether he was embarrassed or whatever, but his face was full of steam. Like he was red, angry, like just not happy. Now, Charlie just really put it well there, and so did Alan Koch, that you can't argue with the results after with Ongaro on the bench. But when you take a player off in form like that, if you're an Eddies fan, are you, one, questioning the method behind the madness, or are you kind of happy that Alan Koch is a bit of a leader that is going to do that kind of thing now to a team that might need to make big decisions like that if they're going to be contending in this league?
Yeah, I almost would say, and I definitely don't try and put myself in the shoes of a supporter, especially when I'm not in the market, but I would almost appreciate it more because in general, I don't know that Alan Koch has put many a foot wrong since taking over this team. I don't think he's getting enough credit. Obviously, they're in the race for it right now, but you think about where they were last year and how I believe it was spring season 2019 where it sort of ended. And I don't mean to come at Jeff Paulus at all, but I really think what Alan Koch has done with this group has been incredible. And even bringing in, you mentioned Gonzalez, you got to think about Adam Jem they brought in as well. Like they are irreplaceable now in that 11, and they came in midway through the season. So where might that side be without them? Just to Ongaro, yeah, obviously it's a surprise. Humi and I kind of looked at each other surprised in the broadcast booth. And when you're right, KJ, when we're doing games remotely and we can't talk to coaches or really get a look at things over the break, like we need those ISO shots to be like, okay, quick scan. Do you see ice? Do you see crutches? Do you see physio with him? But no, you just see an aghast, almost in disbelief, Easton Ongaro. Like, you want that in a player. You don't want the players to be like, oh, I'm out for 45. Like, that's fine. Just put my feet up and take the rest of the day off. You want them to be a little bit ticked off that they're not playing. But I didn't mind the change. It obviously wasn't a like-for-like switch with bringing Genoa Su on, but I don't mind what they did with that, playing a little bit more direct. They knew Halifax was going to be tired. I think that they were able to move the ball a lot better. I mean, I think they had something like 10 or 11 corner kicks. Like the amount of set pieces the Eddies had, I think like they should be a little bit frustrated to have not been able to score one. But in terms of the tactics, I think that's a sign that Alan Koch knows this team really, really well now. And when you find the dual tandem threat up top, you don't want to go away from it when it's working early, but he's got to rotate. He's got to make his changes. And I think ultimately he got it right, and it almost came off for them.
Yeah, the counter argument is, what does Easton have to do to play? He's the all-time leading goal scorer, and he's in form. Like, I don't know. I just think poor Easton. He deserves it.
Yeah, I don't entirely disagree with that, Marty. I just wonder if you want to do something a little bit more direct and you don't want Morshevsky and Ongaro at the same time, do you not feel like you're getting a little bit better distribution and a bit more of an all-around play from Morshevsky out there and not Ongaro? I don't think that Ongaro was poor by any means, but that's sort of where I lean to about what I thought was going on there.
You did have a grandstand view, Adam, for a front row ticket for Ian Hume, striker extraordinaire, finding out that at number 9, losing 1-0 has been taken off for a right-sided fullback. I would have loved to have seen the steam coming out of Hume's face, let alone Easton Ongaro, after a decision like that. I'm sure he was blowing his mind.
Hume's amazing for a lot of reasons, but like he doesn't try and show when he's like dumbfounded by something. There's a lot of hands on the head, or he'll be thinking about something like this, like arms crossed, lean back in his chair. But yeah, he's a very animated guy, and you're right.
Wow. One of the many things I love about him, you cannot hide his emotions. You know exactly what it is, and that's what we love about him.
That's being a good broadcast partner. When he comes away from the mic, you know he can't say something immediately.
There you go.
I had to give him a careful at one point in the broadcast. It felt like a dad because he was getting really frustrated.
Remember that?
Like, I don't want to call back on air what happened with the F-bomb, Hume, but careful, mate. Careful.
Love it. I love it. Talking of emotions running high, and what a story it was in Ottawa. Drew Beckie comes back to captain Atlético Ottawa after at least a month away with health complications. Not only captained the team to a win, but how about getting an early goal as well, Marty? You know, we all sit down and we've covered every game on our Canadian Premier League site this season on the newsroom. We sit down and wonder how the story is going to go here. Sometimes you start typing halfway through the game. Sometimes you type observations near the end of the game. Drew Beckie scores early. I'd imagine you're like, oh, this kind of writes itself.
It was written in the stars. It was written in the stars. The celebration was great. Yeah, Ottawa win 3-1. They end this insane unbeaten winless skid. For Beckie himself, like, you know, Mista in the lead up to the game, I asked, you know, he said he's going to be available. Like, what does he mean to this team? And he just said flat out, he makes the team better. And I think that's what exactly we saw on Saturday and what this team had missed. Beckie himself, he was pretty open after the game. And for those who don't know, you know, he contracted COVID-19 in February, and he's obviously had those heart issues that have dated back in his career. And he had some complications flare up due to an exposure earlier this summer, and it was a bit of a scare. And as Janine Beckie, his sister, who plays for Manchester City and obviously Canada, you know, revealed, like, they didn't know if he was going to play again. He didn't know if he was even going to get that opportunity. So to come back and score in the second minute, we should also note, just running the whole length of the field to tap that in. He said after, he's like, I'm not that fit. I was like, you're fit enough to get up there in the second minute, and then maybe after that just be gassed for the rest of the half. But yeah, a great story. And all around, we should be talking about how he marshaled that defense against a Cavalry team that had something like 18 shots, second most crosses rather, in league history. I think they had something like closer to 40. It was madness, but Ottawa held firm.
Yeah, they did. A crazy game. Cavalry had a lot to like about it. We'll get to them in a second, but Beckie is a player and a man that this team needs. Yep. You know, 100%. It's not a cliche. You just need good people.
You said that last week.
They're
crying out for leaders.
Exactly, yep. Right. And I'm not saying that they don't have good people, but Drew is a different kind of person. He's a very special person, a good guy. And you can tell in these moments, and I know they gave away another penalty, but they're having issues during games giving away. And Mista has said it in his broken English many times. It's like, you cannot always be sad on the pitch. Is basically his message saying, guys, get over it, show resilience. And when things go down, we need leaders. And that's what Drew Beckie brings, because he brings experience, he brings leadership to that back line, Adam. And when you called that goal, you must have been aware that this is a pretty special moment in the Canadian Premier League 2021 season.
It was the first time that mid-goal call, I was getting so excited that I had to move the microphone away from my mouth so that I didn't blast our audio guy Anthony's ears out. But yeah, and I knew, like, I'm not going to say I knew that he was going to score a goal, but he just looked locked in from the get-go. Like the header away at the other side of the pitch, and you mentioned the comment about him not being in form, Marty, but he booked it. Like, he did not stop running. Oh, yeah. And like that, and anyone who's played on turf field, CFL fields too, like the size of them, he did not give up on that ball. And I mean, you could maybe say that Escalante should have had his head on a swivel a bit more to pick him up, but Beckie was always scoring that goal. And just, you talk about the intangibles he brings. It was little things that I would notice for me. I think that was the best I've seen Ottawa keep an offside trap throughout the season. Like, time and time again, like, you look and we go to those close call replays, and the ARs had a tough match because of how close they were playing that. But Beckie has them organized. There's no head down. And when I'm sure we'll just get to it in a second, the Dylon Powley save, I'm pretty sure Beckie ran right at Sergio Camargo and like full screaming excitement energy. Like, he was so into it, and it's like he didn't miss a step. So I think it's a great shout about leadership. That's what that team needs. It's always going to be a tricky balance. You know that they're going to have a lot of Atletico Madrid academy players, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good luxury to have, but they need those permanent. I understand the league. I understand this team and what this market wants. And then you build around that. And as long as Beckie can move and kick a ball, I don't know how you don't re-sign him for perpetuity.
Just to add,
Beckie tweeted about it, right, Marty?
So he clarified he wasn't screaming at Camargo, but this touches Kristian on your point and Adams as well. Like, you talk about what he brings to this team. He said he was screaming justice for them giving up a penalty but not conceding somehow. Like, he's just imagine your captain screaming justice. Like, I'd be
amazing.
Freaked out. I'd be freaked out, but then I'd be thrilled. Like,
to be fair, at on Saturday morning at the same time, Charlie O'Connor Clarke and myself were not in the same city, both screaming justice at the same time as Bruno Fernandes's ball went to the moon.
It's still up there. It's still up there. It's in orbit.
Still traveling. So both of us did that. We could definitely relate. For one weekend only, Charlie and I were very much like Drew Beckie, shouting justice on a penalty call. Let's get to that. Tommy Wheeldon, careful what you wish for, mate. You've been dreaming of penalties all year. You've been wanting them. You play actually a really good attacking brand of football for the majority of the match. You get the penalty. And didn't you just know it? I kind of felt it. Here we go. Oh, we finally got a penalty. They could have had many of them this season. Should have in a few. And Camargo then gets stopped not once, but twice by Dylon Powley, who in a moment definitely booked his spot in the team of the week, the Gatorade team of the week. It was a good week for goalkeepers, but how could I not pick this guy? Adam, when you call in a moment like that, that's pretty special, no? 2 big saves, emotion. You could feel the crowd get behind it. And I was pleased for Dylon Powley. He's had a good season.
Yeah, those are the ones that really make you wish you were there, because you would be able to really tap into the emotion. But I'm not going to say that I saw it coming. I thought there would be... I almost took the opposite route, where as soon as Camargo went up, I was like, okay, this is a bit of... You talk about justice. This is justice for them, for how well they've been playing and for how many chances they've created for themselves. And I tweeted this after the game. Dylon Powley deserved that moment. I don't think he gets nearly enough benefit of the doubt, I think, when it comes to his record, because he's been a horse for them. He starts almost every match. I think Obadell's had 3, a couple in the cup, but Dylon Powley comes in, he puts his head down, he goes to work, and he's vocal. His positioning is great. He's animated. He moves the ball well. There's been a couple times where I thought that the goal kicks, like those restarts have been a bit questionable, but just in general, Dylon Powley earned that moment, especially at coming against Cavalry. I think there's a little bit of like extra sweetness there, just based on his past and his upbringing. But look, he deserved it, and I don't know that. If he's offered and the money's right and he wants to stay, I think he's the future of that position in Ottawa. And I don't know why you'd want to take him out of the net. And it just felt like the relief and justice for the PK, but justice for Dylon Powley too, because those were 2 amazing stops. And I was sitting for that because I was on, I think, hour 3 of broadcasting. But as soon as the penalty was like Camargo was walking up, I stood up, and I'm glad I stood up, because I was almost as animated as Dylon was.
That's good. Yeah, another leader and another pillar that team needs to build around. No question about it. So what of Cavalry, fellas? So has anything over the last 4 games changed your mind about this team, hindered a little bit of possibility of them becoming a team that can win it all? Or is it simply that tough stretch that we all knew that was coming? Bear in mind, it wasn't that long ago we were talking about this team at the beginning of August, to the middle of, to a few weeks ago, 5 wins and 2 draws from a 7-game stretch. They were the best team in form in the league. Since then, winless in 4, knocked out at home in the cup, which is never ideal. But they are in the middle of this 7-game road stretch. They tried to change it up a little bit. They brought some freshness. They played to back 4 on the weekend. Charlie, anything you've seen here that makes you question Cavalry that you didn't over the last 4 games?
They just seem a lot less efficient than they were maybe a month ago with the ball, because they're still playing so well out of the back. They're always going to do that with the kinds of center backs that can move the ball so well, with Klomp and Yao and even David Norman Jr., who didn't maybe have his greatest game in this game. But yeah, they're maybe just not finding those same spaces in the box that they have in other games. Joe Mason obviously didn't start this game. Maybe that's part of it, because he's been the finisher at a lot of points in this season, but they've had so many different looks up front, and it hasn't necessarily been able to get them into an attacking rhythm. But the thing with Cavalry that's maybe standing out to me, Adam, you mentioned earlier that every CPL coach seems to have catchphrases by now. It was Stephen Hart. Tommy Wheeldon Jr., every time they lose a game, he basically the way he talks about it is that Cavalry have won the league 2 years in a row in terms of the regular season, if we want to call a 7-game stretch at the Island Games, if we want to call that a regular season table as well. They've come first in every other league table season, and they have 0 trophies to show for it, right? And so every time Tommy Wheeldon Jr. speaks about these mid-season games, if they lose or whatever, he's like, honestly, at this point, it's hard for us to really, really care too much about where exactly we are at the table, because we just want to win those 2 games at the end of the season. And, every coach will tell you they're not looking at the table. They're taking it game by game. But I actually believe it with Cavalry. I think they actually have seen themselves, dominate during the season and win the table and be like, well, we lost to Forge again anyway, so now what? So I think that they are going to have another gear that they kick into, maybe if we get to the last few games of the season. But they're not particularly worried. I mean, the attack is a little bit inefficient, but I'm not sure if I'd be particularly concerned about them just yet.
Marty, what about you? I understand Tommy's point. All I would say is it's going to be really difficult with the player format to win back-to-back away games.
Absolutely.
I would imagine they'd want to play a home game here. Even if they can't get number 1, surely you want number 2. Because if you're going to tell me you're going to have to go through Forge and then Pacific, both back-to-back away games in a week, that can't be the best-case scenario for this team, surely.
Yeah, that's kind of the kicker of what we've seen in the top 3, right? Is now Pacific is, they're not quite running away with first, but there's a big advantage in first. And you're right, there's a big advantage in second as well. But also to Charlie's point, I think overall Tommy is, I don't know, Tommy has talked a lot about, when he talks about riding the Peloton was his catchphrase a week ago, and now it's something else, and in a week it'll be something else. But it's about
maybe they're having a drinks break they're currently having a drinks break in that bike ride they're having the Tour de Canada. They're in a drinks break right now.
Like most Pelotons bought in Canada, I'm sure it's going to be a weeks long drinks break, and then you're going to sell it on Kijiji. But can you sell Peloton on Kijiji? I don't know.
Just hang your laundry on it, mate. Like a lot of people.
Yeah,
yeah, that's true. But yeah, I mean, at this point, I think you have to kind of just focus on trying to peak at the right time. But something we should know from Tommy from after the game was, he didn't say explicitly, but he's made some decisions on the team that can take him forward out of this game. There were a lot of sloppy turnovers. It was very uncharacteristic of Cavalry, and I think his quote was, "Christmas came early in Ottawa. We gave them all the goals." He obviously rested Nick Ledgerwood and Mason Trafford specifically. But I got the quote here. I got some really good answers today, which helps in the grand scheme of things for how our team wants to play. It's not about winning the league table, as we know. It's about how we're going to do in the playoffs. So I think that has to be the mantra at this point for Cavalry.
I think it's really fair. The 2 things I'll say is that I do think they have another gear. They've got a majority of the games next are going to be at home. I think 6 of the last 7 or 6 of the last 8 are all at home. Yep. Here's one stat that I would counter that with. Teams that have won by 2 goals or more this season. Pacific, 6 games they've won by 2 goals or more this season. Forge, 5 games they've won by 2 goals or more this season. Cavalry, 1.
They've only scored multiple goals. They've only scored 1 goal a game or less in the last 6 or 7 games. Even when they were winning.
Inefficient
when they're winning.
They are inefficient, back to Charlie's point. That game, by the way, that they won by more than 1 goal was the second game in the bubble when they beat Ottawa 4-1.
Right.
Since then, I've lost to Ottawa twice. So, not necessarily ideal. But, yeah, look, I do think there's another gear. I think Di Chiara has got to play a bigger role in that system if he's going to play in that linchpin between midfield and forward. Definitely. He's still getting his legs as well. All right, let's move on to the nightcap heavyweight clash at Tim Hortons Field. And playing the role of Anthony Joshua was Pacific FC as they lost a big heavyweight clash again. The fluidity of Forge put it too much in the end. I thought this was a tremendous game of football. What a hell of a game it really was. 2 teams at a different level, a different speed, a different tempo, pressing each other, trying to play through the press. A real different quality of match, Charlie. But in the end, it has to be said, Pacific will have got on that bus after the game and gone, they beat us again. Lost 4 games this season and 3 have come to Forge. And that's not ideal when it was their last time to try and play them before the playoffs. Your thoughts, Charlie, on this game as you watched what was, as I said, was a tremendous match.
It really was. Yeah, I don't think Pacific have ever beaten Forge.
No.
over 3 years. What is it, 7 wins for Forge, or possibly even 8?
That was the 8th, I believe.
Yeah, it is a lot, and it's becoming a theme, which is a very, especially if this is to be a playoff preview, which it very well could be. But I was just so fascinated by Forge in this game. You know, the way they lined up in some formation that I have had trouble trying to explain. It was almost a circle, the way that they lined up, with kind of every player just around the perimeter, and then Kyle Becker and Paulo Sabac running everywhere in the midfield on their own. But Emery Welshman got his first start since coming back for this team up front. Mo Babouli comes back and he plays on the wing, and a lot of it was actually just completely out on the wide area, which isn't something that he usually does for Forge. But it was just fascinating how all of these players seem to play in maybe 4 different positions on the night. The front 3 were kind of a revolving door. Welshman and Babouli kept swapping who was playing on the wing and who was playing up front, and just Pacific just couldn't track them, I think, for a lot of these stages, because Forge just moved the ball so quickly. As soon as they would win the ball, they would get it forward immediately, and all of the runners off the ball were really causing trouble for Pacific. And it was just so hard to stop their forward momentum. And I think even Bobby Smirniota still would have liked to see them finish a few more of their chances. But just the way that Forge were able to get up into the attacking third with these quick little passes, little give and goes, especially along the wide areas, because these wingers were playing very close to the fullbacks. It was just fascinating to see how much energy they were able to bring to that, and just how quickly they were able to get up the pitch, which was maybe surprising for a Forge team that, a few hours probably after that game had to fly to Panama.
Yeah, they flew
like a 24-hour flight.
Yeah, they flew Sunday morning. Yeah. I was surprised. I'm glad you mentioned it, because I know there's not a lot of rotation because the squads are not that big, but to play that amount of top-class players before you get on a flight or before a Tuesday game, it was almost like they were like, yeah, Tuesday's important, but there's no way we're going to let Pacific beat us in a game like this because of the storyline. So you mentioned the tactical versatility. Cisse at right back was tremendous. Again, one-on-one situations just shut down Pacific's wide players. Ashinoni Jonsson, again, you gave him man of the match. I thought it was right, Charlie. Plays in central midfield but drops into a defense. Again, was really good. Crutzen had a really good game. Becker played higher. And by the way, a word on Kyle Becker, because when the game, Adam, let me go to you. When the game is the biggest, he shines the brightest every time. Yeah, it's like Pacific didn't have a player like Becker that understood where he needs to go, reading the game tactically to stand up, wanting the ball, go higher to cause problems. And I thought Hajabrapur did really well, by the way. I thought he was one of the best players for Pacific. But Becker is just on another level in a night like that, Adam.
He is the flagship man for this league, and I don't think he's showing any signs of slowing down. The only player that I think the impact can't be or could be compared to is the guy for Pacific who's been out since before the Whitecaps, and that's Marco Bustos. And that's one of the reasons why I don't think I'm overly concerned. We'll probably do a little bit more Pacific talk in a second here, but no, Kyle Becker, like, he's played the most minutes, the most matches in league history. And when you need that guy to smell blood and bring everyone else along, be like, hey, guys, weakness right there. Let's go attack this right now. Doesn't matter the situation, doesn't matter the country, it doesn't matter the stadium. I expect to see that again tomorrow night, and especially with no Tristan Borges, he will need to be a little bit more versatile. Tristan being out on yellow card accumulation, but look, Kyle Becker is Mr. CPL, and I can't be convinced otherwise until someone over a long period shows that.
Before we get to Pacific's role in this, you mentioned it. Let's touch on it. Live on OneSoccer, 6:00 Tuesday night, Concacaf League second leg in Panama against Independiente. Charlie, you did the game. Adam, you did the first game as well. First of all, hope they don't get any lightning delays for you, mate. I don't know whether it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's all right.
At the weather.
Yeah, well, you know what? Maybe that might be a bit of karma, because Independiente wanted to waste a bunch of time in the first leg anyway. And I bring that up because I think that was nothing more than a sign, when I'm watching it, of tremendous respect. Like, here we are, CPL, waiting for CONCACAF games. We've created the CPL. Now we've got our team in the CONCACAF games, and a team who most people expect to progress come to play that CONCACAF League game in the CPL stadium and spend most of the game lying on the floor trying to waste time and get out there with a 0-0. I mean, does that show how far we've come as a league and what people are respecting Forge around the region?
Absolutely. And the thing too is like that was their game. They needed that one away goal. They got a stop from their goalie on a PK, and you thought like maybe that would energize them, a la Dylon Powley, but they never they had that early opportunity in the beginning where they were bailed out by an offside. But aside from that, I did not think Independiente looked all that threatening, to be honest. So I was a bit surprised to see the tactics really on display in a game where the away goal would mean so much. So it's a reflection of Forge because they don't back down. Like they make that hard for you to come in now. I almost wonder what the mood is like when teams get drawn up against them now. They go, oh, there's this team in Canada that has a gorgeous stadium. They play this tough, gritty, hard to break down kind of brand of football. And now we have to make the flight up to Canada. And I almost wonder if there's almost a reverse psychology going on now where it's no longer like, ooh, how's Forge going to do in CONCACAF? It's Forge should win in CONCACAF, and they should have been in the Champions League this year. I think tomorrow, I don't want to say it's going to be a walk in the park, but they just need a goal. They can rotate a little bit and slow it down in the second half should they need to. Omar Brownie is going to be super fun now that he's back in the team playing against potentially, if he's allowed. I haven't been able to ask Bobby about that yet, if he's allowed to play.
Yeah, I think he is allowed.
He is. Bobby said he is.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, then that's one more storyline, right? So I think it's Forge's night. And to be honest, I think this is their year to really make a splash in this competition. I wouldn't be surprised to see them go really deep. This is where the eggs are in the proverbial basket. And I do genuinely think we need to start wondering if these Central American teams are going, damn, we have to go to Canada to play Forge.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Why not? It's tough. Yeah. Hey, I'm all in for some more CONCACAF nonsense with Brownie getting the goal. Like, just like imagine like he has like the Panama kit under the Forge kit, and he takes it off, but then he's got another one underneath that, and he takes that off as well, and he just shows he's got. First of all, I was Panama, now Forge, now I'm Panama, no, I'm not Independent.
And they're like, how did you hide wearing 3 shirts?
Hey, that's fine. Hey, he got the goal on the weekend, so by the way, he did look good too. He looked a bit of a different class, to be honest. He's a good player. When he came on, tight spaces, explosive, and I'm sure Pacific are watching on the bench going, oh boy, here we go. As if Forge needed another bullet in the gun. They got Omar Brownie now. What of Pacific, Marty? I turn to you. Kind of feel like that your team at the moment. You picked them early in the season. You've been all over them. You were right from the start. What did you make of this performance? Because I thought they were really good at parts, but again, a little bit. I don't know. Is it that Chicago Bulls, Detroit Pistons stuff going on here a little bit from the last dance? Like they can't beat these guys.
If this game was at the Palace, I don't know which team would be the Pistons. This point, I think if the game was at Starlight Stadium, the result's going to be different.
Okay.
I think this team. I don't know. I think it's the same thing you touched on with CONCACAF, Adam. Teams target Forge, and like you mentioned, Kristian, like they were good in parts, but I think part of it is like you're playing Forge, like you can't escape that, and you can't get used to it because you play them a bit in the bubble. Obviously, they had some very difficult games against Forge in the bubble. I think about the goal that Kyle Becker scored, that big looping effort off of the short free kick, I believe, and that was a super frustrating game for Pacific because they felt like they had a chance there. This is a frustrating team for Pacific to play, and I think maybe they're just. I don't know. I think if I'm Paul, I'm thinking, okay, how did we sort of mentally lapse in this game? Why did we sort of buckle under that? Because I think, a player like Manny Aparicio, who's been in form, I think he was pretty good, but, they're just missing a couple of those little moments that they could score. Taron Campbell had that opportunity that really could have changed the match.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like if this game's on the West Coast, it's going to be different, and we'll see that in the 2021 CPL final.
Bring it on. Wow.
All right.
There you go. Clip that one. You mentioned that game in the bubble when Becker scored that goal. The other game that they lost 3-0, we have to remember that Diaz missed an absolute sitter at 0-0. And I'm a massive fan of his, but that came back to haunt them because Forge were on the ropes back then. They'd lost the first 2 games.
That was their first good game of the season. I think.
And then Forge came out and got those 3 goals, including a penalty in 10 minutes, and ended up winning 3-0 in a game that wasn't anywhere near that. But yeah, lots of storylines as we get closer to the playoffs. Let's finish off our chat on the 4th game of the weekend and to York Lions Stadium, where the Nine Straps won from a losing position with Lowell Wright getting a brace. Important to grab a win, particularly after Halifax had got the win earlier. And also, Marty, because York have given away a lot of points during this run. They've been on a tremendous run. 5 wins, 5 draws, 2 losses since the bubble. That's a fantastic run, by the way, losing 2 of 12. But during that run, they've actually given away a lot more points than they could have done from winning positions. So this time they turn the tables around, get 2 goals from Wright in the second half. And Gutierrez, I thought, was tremendous, coming on and making a big difference again, bringing that real pressing need to cause the turnover. But just goes to show you, this York team continuing to grow up in front of our eyes, Marty.
Yeah, no team has quite grown together like York has, I think, across any season of the CPL. Because keep in mind, the CPL winning blueprint has always been familiarity. And this team has like 9 or 10 players that they've carried over, which is a considerable amount. But just kind they have grown, and how, a game against Valour like this really changes the playoff picture. It really does, especially with, I think we've got another game coming up against Halifax here real quick. You win that game and suddenly York is far and away favorites for 4th. I think they've just grown into it, and players like Deity Nabsy as well, who had a lovely assist in that one. Lowell Wright is a player who's been incredible this season. They're just growing, and I think that's going to be bad news for Pacific, who will play them in the first round of the 2021 CPL playoff.
But you already just put them in the final.
Yeah. Make up your mind here.
Yeah,
I said the semifinal.
Oh, okay. Oh. You just said it was bad. It's okay. Yeah, Charlie,
no, we all heard it.
Doesn't matter.
Take himself out, KJ.
It's okay. We'll clip both. You'll be right on one of them. It's fine.
Covering his bases.
Covering your bases. It's fine. Yeah, exactly. What of Valour here? Because Phil Dos Santos had them set up well. Levi's gets the goal. I actually thought they played well in that first half. Levi's had a very good first half anyway, despite the goal. I thought Pena played well. They brought a lot of pace down the width at wide areas. And then it just collapsed again in the second half. And as Marty alluded to, I know it was the first game for the Phil Dos Santos era, but this felt bigger than that. This playoff run that they're on, he came in, he said, we still believe we can make the playoffs. He called you out for your shirts behind you during that time as well, which was great. But yeah, first of all, we need to get you a Valour shirt, but mate, behind there, so Phil Dos Santos doesn't keep doing that, because he will bring it up again. But they didn't really show that to show a Phil Dos Santos term, that bite of a vampire in the second half.
There it is.
I absolutely refuse to engage this dialogue anymore with the Twilight thing.
Why not?
I'm not in for it. I'm sorry. I will say though that York is sending me a kit. So they heard me call them out on Twitter. So the kit's in the mail. So I'm just saying.
That's how to do it, mate. You just keep mixing it up. Just keep changing it over. Like whoever's playing that week, each other. If
I had the kits, KJ, you absolutely can believe that I'd be rotating.
Get this man some kits. The voice of the CPL. Get him some kits.
Absolutely.
I do want to say, and this might surprise people, I think Valour should have come away with at least a point, maybe if not the win last night, because the second goal is just a bad mistake. So if that doesn't happen, it's a completely different game. I have no idea what Raf Gallardo was doing at the end of the game in stoppage time when the ball was at his feet for 3 seconds. And I think he just literally had like a short circuit and didn't just turn and shoot. Yeah. They played a lot better than I thought they would, considering the week that they've had. I'd never expected them to come out and have a convincing, fully fluid and comprehensive new look under Phil Dos Santos after just a few days. I still think they're in this, and maybe it's my pride going back and remembering when I locked them into the playoffs coming out of the kickoff, and I don't want to concede that I might be wrong on that, but I don't think that York was as convincing as they looked yesterday, and they're trending upwards, and that's really good. I still think they're on track for where Jimmy Brennan wants them to be, but it almost seems like because of the success that they've been having, that we've almost glossed over the fact that this was a team that couldn't hold out victories. And we almost saw that again last night. Time and time again, we've seen them collapse late in games. And I think there were 3 or 4 opportunities for Valour yesterday who never stopped working, never stopped trying to find that goal to get them back into the match. So I think the race for 4th is closer than it looks. And look, Jimmy Brennan's got that team close to perfect right now, and they'll take the results where they can get them. I just don't think it's a sure thing by any means.
Interesting take. 29 points for York from 20 games. Halifax 25 from 19. They're 4 back with a game in hand. Valour are 6 back with a game in hand on 23 from 19. Still a lot of football to be played. You mentioned it. York 8 games left. Halifax and Valour have 9. What a week for Valour if they are going to follow up with Adams' prediction. Back-to-back home games. Pacific at home on Wednesday and Edmonton at home on Saturday. Not going to call it must win yet because it certainly isn't. But boy, oh boy, do they need to get some points in this week, Charlie, for these games. You got to beat Edmonton, right? At least try and get 4 out of 6. Do you think?
That would go a very long way. And I am still fascinated to see how this team does look going forward. Because again, as Adam mentioned, it only has been a couple days that Phil Dos Santos has been the coach, which is kind of an elephant in the room. But it is very interesting to see if they will be any different at all. I think there were some slight differences in the ways that players were used, or especially the substitutes in that game on Sunday. Moses Dyer came in and played a little bit further forward than he had in some of his recent games for Valour, and he looked really good, I thought. Yep. He came out with 7 shots as a substitute. That's pretty remarkable.
Goal is coming. It's just 3 from the spot so far, but he's close.
They're in a good position because they've got a lot of players back, and I think that's what people were thinking about Rob Gale. Adam and I did the game. They showed this pressing style against Cavalry, which turned out to be Rob Gale's last match, that they hadn't done all season because they felt like they were probably going to gas their players. And now, okay, let's go and start show this identity. Will Phil Dos Santos stick with that? But, as we mentioned, they're getting healthier. They obviously don't have the key man at the back in Jean-Baptiste. Ricci. These are massive, big problems for this team. But other than that, catchers come back. They've got Romeo's back from suspension. Cabarra's back, although made the mistake. Reyes has been good. They've got pieces there.
You've got 2 number 1 goalies, KJ?
Yeah, 2 number 1 goalies. Yeah, exactly. And Silva's been good. He was in the team of the week. Obviously, would like that pass back to Cabarra. So, I'm with you. I think that these teams are really close. All 4 numbers 4, 5, and 6, and I think York. Their schedule is probably favorable as well in terms of some of their opponents compared to that, as is Halifax's. But this is going to be a good race, boys. Good race. Yeah. Looking forward to it. Yeah, should be good. This week, the games in total are Wednesday night, Valour take on we'll do the first one. Halifax take on Ottawa first from the Wanderers ground at 5:30 Eastern. These are all live on OneSoccer. Valour take on Pacific from IG Field, and a triple header concludes in Alberta once again as Edmonton at Clarke Field host Cavalry in the Clash of Alberta. That should be a good one. On the weekend, more fun and action. Valour take on Edmonton from IG Field on Saturday. And then on Sunday, York against Halifax at York Lions Stadium. Another big game between those two. And the come-on match of the week, Atlético Ottawa take on Forge after Forge travel back from Panama to go to TD Place Stadium. A reminder, go to CanPL.ca/predictor. You can pick all those victories and depend on who's going to win. You could win some points to get to the finals, and you can come and see us there. We'll be partying in Pacific, according to Marty Thompson.
Somewhere. We will be partying somewhere.
We'll be partying somewhere. All of us will be there at one point somewhere. We don't know where yet, but it's getting closer, boys. This has been fun. Adam, you enjoyed yourself?
I had a great time. I want to add quickly before we go, KJ.
Please.
This is a story that needs a lot more time to fully breathe and discuss, but the announcement that Concacaf League or Concacaf Champions League is changing in 23. We don't know where the 2 CanPL spots will go until that moment happens. And if they decide to say regular season winner gets that second spot, winner of the final gets the other, if that's the way they want to do it, I don't think I'm worried about Pacific losing to Forge again. It just part of me says it's a team of destiny. When all bets are off if they make it to the finals, especially if it is at Starlight. And same with Cavalry. I think they're going to be okay. The top 3 they're going to jostle. Forge might even win the darn thing at this point. I wouldn't put it past them, but I think that second spot will make the regular season race a lot more interesting should they go down that route. But yes, sorry for detracting the outro.
No, it's not the outro. You mentioned a great point because I think it's really interesting that is probably the way the league will go. We'll see what they're going to do with those 2 spots. But I've been a big proponent of 2 spots, 2 trophies. Let's get this trophy for the regular season winner and then a trophy for the cup competition. And Palmer Ducar, by the way, who might be on the end of that this year, was the first person who said that a long time ago to say that Cavalry and Tommy Wheeldon Jr. should have had a trophy in 2019. Parr has said that many times publicly in press conferences. He's been very big on that. And not so if anyone starts saying, Palmer Ducar is saying it now because his team's winning, he was very early on that case. Right, Charlie? You'll back me up on this?
Oh, yeah. He's called Cavalry rightful champion several times.
He has. does. Yeah, he's probably called them more rightful champions than Tommy Peloton Wielden. So,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. Hey, listen, this has been fun, gents. Have a great week covering the games. Adam, we'll be hearing you on Tuesday. We'll be doing the coverage on CanPL.ca as well, as Forge go to Panama in the Concacaf League. An enormous match for them. We'll be pulling for them. Marty and Charlie, as usual, will be covering all the games. And we'll be back, I think, next Sunday, because Benedict is back to 2021 with a new mic. And we'll hopefully he's on the air for that, for his jokes, because we missed him a little bit. But Adam was more than a replacement today. We appreciate your time, Adam. Thanks again for your time, and have a good call Tuesday night, mate.
My pleasure. It only took me name dropping this podcast on a broadcast to get me here, so I don't know what it's going to take for a return visit, but it was
You're
fun.
welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome anytime. Marty, Charlie, Adam, this has been Kristian. Thanks again, boys. Enjoy the games, everybody. We'll see you soon.